It's the Win It Podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay, breaking down tonight's 9-game NBA slate, and it's looking like a decent one. Lots of big tournaments out there. You got the big $4 on DraftKings, 100K to first, so that's going to be fun. Good night for tournaments, and I know you're in agreement there.
Yeah, I was pretty excited when I saw that one. Definitely going to be throwing some lineups into that one. Pour one out to our New York friends right now, but we'll be playing lineups and then trying to win some GPPs for you guys.
Yeah, in dedication to the big NY. But looking at Vegas tonight, and there's one clear-cut number one total sitting at 232, which always usually belongs to Golden State and whatever that game is. But they're playing Minnesota on the road. 12.5-point spread. As far as other block concerns go, Cleveland, Denver, -12, Pacers, 76ers, -15. And you and I are both kind of just going to put our heads down and not worry about the blowouts tonight. We're going to just attack those games head-on in tournaments.
Just be like Mike Allstott in the mid to early 2000s. Just run straight into them. I just like these. There's a lot of games tonight with the blowout concerns that I usually target. So like the Nuggets, the Sixers, the Timberwolves, and sometimes the Warriors. I just look at those four teams, and usually I like a lot of those plays. So even though the lines are a little bit bigger tonight, I'm not as afraid by the blowout concerns as I normally would be, just because I think the value matches up a little better. It might be worth the risk considering I believe it's a tournament night anyway.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. And looking at kind of closer games to target, Chicago, Sacramento, 219, Orlando, Boston, 216, Atlanta, Washington, 207. You're looking at Memphis and Phoenix being just 2-point spread sitting at 204. We both were caught off guard by San Antonio just being 6.5-point favorites. Yes, they're on the road. Charlotte's been playing well. Kind of an indication that seems to be circling around that maybe someone sits for San Antonio.
Yeah, you look at that line, and that's a big red blinking sign to me that something's up because while Charlotte's a pretty solid team, I think the Spurs would pretty much be favored by anyone more than that usually. So something to keep an eye on there and see what's going on. Definitely want to sort of hedge a little bit depending on who you're going in on for that game.
Yeah. Looking at point guards tonight, there's not too many injury concerns to really take a look at. 1 minute situation I want to talk about is Memphis. We're looking at we talked about Bryant A. Weber being the defensive stud he was, and then basically on a 10-day contract and then headed out of town, while Ray McCollum's been the guy who is going to probably take over here and start against the Clippers, played 35 minutes, 14, 3, and 2 with 2 blocks. Not a bad line against Chris Paul for basically bare minimum tonight against Phoenix. I got to keep an eye on him as a punt play.
Definitely keep an eye on him. I mean, can't really beat his price, DraftKings 3,200. So if you're really looking to go stars and scrubs and you really want to open up value at one position, that might be in play.
Yeah. Looking at the top guys, Curry, kind of an obvious play against Ricky Rubio in Minnesota. John Wall as well with his high usage. Kemba, not really on as far as San Antonio goes. You in agreement there?
Yeah, pretty much. Those three are pretty straightforward. Probably not touching Kemba tonight, but Curry, Wall, if you want to make lineups fitting them in, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Looking at that middle range, Rondo GPP only, just because he's been a little bit up and down lately. I really like Isaiah Thomas yet again tonight.
Yeah, Thomas and Irving, both pretty solid plays for me, especially depending on if Kevin Love plays or not. But I mean, Denver's been pretty solid to match up against in terms of fantasy points. So that's one guy I'm looking at, and I know you really like Thomas as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Thomas, he has not scored less than 20 points, 20 real points since February 29th against Utah, which is a tougher matchup anyway. So he's been, kind of on fire. The peripheral stats have been a little bit down of late, and I think that's just more a concern with the tougher matchups, but the scoring's been really consistent. So in a matchup against Orlando, I expect the peripherals to be up as well with his normal scoring.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Brandon Knight. He's a little cheaper, but I actually think he has pretty similar upside to those guys tonight, just based on the matchup that is Memphis now. It's not necessarily that intimidating anymore, and he's been reasonably solid from a ceiling standpoint lately. So definitely in play for me in tournaments as well tonight.
Yep, I'm looking at him as well. I think that game's a pretty safe bet for a lot of value with, I guess, mid-range value with upside.
Mm-hmm.
Looking a little bit cheaper, there's a couple guys that they're kind of eyeing. Derrick Rose has kind of slipped down in price, and a great matchup against Sacramento. Of course, remember Jimmy Butler did not play the last time these two played, but I still think 35 fantasy points is pretty reasonable for him, even with the healthy squad.
Yeah, he's been sort of sitting in that 28 to 33 fantasy point range, and I think you give him a little bump just because it's the Kings. So if he can get into that 30 to 35 fantasy point range, you're looking at hitting pretty solid value for him tonight. So yeah, I like him as a play either way, but yeah, just solid play. And like we were talking about, if you're not worried or you want to be a little contrarian with the blowout concerns, I think Ish Smith is one of the guys you want to target if you are sort of going into that Philly game thinking they're going to stay in it a little longer. Ish Smith's definitely one of the guys I'd be targeting.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, if you are planning on those games staying close, and Ish Smith, Noel, kind of those safer options that have the upside and a little bit more of a floor than guys like Thompson, Stauskas, like Jeremy Grant. You're targeting them more so instead. But I'm definitely in agreement there. I think Ish Smith at that price tag, if you're banking on that game staying close, it makes it worthwhile to give him a look.
Great.
Looking cheaper, there are a couple guys. Marcus Smart, nice GPP target tonight, coming off a really solid game against Philly. Minutes have been up and down. I don't think it's been as consistent as expected with Crowder out, but he's still a guy who's going to get a bump either way, just because it's one less body to fill out there.
Right, and with the peripheral upside, he's always in play. I mean, even if he gets in that 20 to 25 minute range, he's still got the potential for maybe one or two steals and one or two blocks. So that can really sort of raise his ceiling higher than you'd think.
Yeah. Another one that kind of caught me off guard, I haven't been on this play lately, and that's DJ Augustine. The minutes have been kind of pretty consistent, I guess. Outside the one game against Orlando, we're at 33. He's been kind of in that 25 range. Really consistent, averaging 14, 2, and 6. He's going to need some scoring against Cleveland. He's going to be a guy off the bench I expect to come in and actually do that, especially if he's going up against Kyrie Irving.
Right, definitely in play. He's actually a much safer option than Smart. He's been very consistent lately, so definitely someone to look at in terms of cash games.
Yep. Looking at shooting guard tonight, and it's kind of obvious you're looking up top at Jimmy Butler against Sacramento. Then it kind of gets into a tougher range. You got Victor Oladipo heading up against Bradley, tougher matchup there. Oladipo is still definitely going to be on my radar for tournaments. Even despite the tougher matchup. Went off against Toronto, put up 36 in a tough spot, against Cleveland in a tough spot, went off. He's just been the guy. He's just a usage hog with Vooch out there, and I think he deserves a look.
Yeah, and he's sort of one of those more explosive type players. And when you look at, I mean, I watched the Thunder Celtics game the other day, and it was pretty unbelievable watching Russell Westbrook against the Celtics. It was like a reality check, bringing the scale back out on what type of player Russell Westbrook is. So I think they are a little easier to beat with super athletic perimeter players. But yeah, so Oladipo's in play, but it is a tougher defense on most nights.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see the upside being there just given the pace of play and just the overall matchup that he has as far as the game theory goes. I could also see just a down game because of the matchup. So I'm kind of limiting my exposure in cash games, but I think GPPs is still a valid play.
Definitely.
Looking a little bit cheaper, Batum against San Antonio, definitely not in play for me there, going up against Kawhi. You look at Middleton, his minutes have been a little bit down of like just 30, 30, and 31 over the last 3 games. Really kind of backed off the trend of that hot scale that he had earlier.
I'll be very intrigued what his ownership percentage is tonight because I mean I'm sure people have been burned over the last few nights. So if his ownership percentage is down a little bit, it might open up a little bit of a contrarian play too, because he has a big enough sample size now where I'm pretty confident it's going to return at some point, to
Yeah.
sort of that 30 to 40 sort of floor range he was looking at for a while there.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's getting burned out. I mean, he's playing heavy minutes. We're starting to tread
Yeah,
into the end of the season. It could just be taking a wear and tear on him.
that's true too.
So, but I think you look at Thompson, GPP target for tonight. He's always a guy who can go off. We've seen that a few times of late. Not a guy, he's still too pricey because he still has that range of about 20, 25 fantasy points at times, and you just hate that from paying 6,800,
Yeah.
65 plus for a guy like that.
Right. And when he goes off, he goes off. But I mean, he's got a really wide range of outcomes. So I guess it just depends on your roster construction. Tournaments in play, but you don't want to put a lot, you don't want to have a lot of shares of him tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's really kind of really scoring dependent. I mean, the rebounds have been actually kind of up and down of late, but he has gotten 5+ rebounds in the game quite a few times over the last 10. I just like guys that just aren't as scoring reliant, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm never really on Thompson.
Right. And okay, so here's a guy, Andrew Wiggins at 6,400.
Speaking of no
Maybe
peripheral stats,
Yeah, I was gonna say he's been getting some more steals as of late, but he's sort of that guy who's a little scoring dependent as well. So might be a little tougher to fit him in tonight. What do you think about Wiggins and also Levine against Golden State?
I'm a little bit more on Levine, and I think I'm kind of curious to see who's going to line up and take who, whether it's going to be Thompson. I'm
Mhm.
going to guess Barnes is going to stay on Wiggins, and Thompson's going to be on Levine. So I like Wiggins a little bit more, actually, I think tonight, as far as comparison to Levine, but I don't think the upside over 35, even in this high total, is there.
He has been hanging around that range though, and I'm wondering if is his floor higher than Klay Thompson right now, even with the price difference, just strictly between them.
I don't think so. I just think if you're looking at a pretty clear sample size over the course of the season, I think it's pretty
Yeah.
similar. I think they really are a similar player. I just don't think Wiggins has the outside shot ability to really give you that big GPP boost.
Right.
But I mean, comparison to guys like Monta Ellis, who I like tonight, sitting in that range, he's just the guy who's just going to consistently get you to 30 in that range most nights. And even the blowout factor, I'm not really too concerned with that price tag.
Yeah, we've finally seen over the last few weeks or so his role is finally established. He's finally getting consistent sort of usage and peripheral stats and points. So, yeah, definitely a solid cash game play for me. And I mean, in this matchup, it's his ceiling's a little higher than normal.
Yeah. There's a couple guys here, Caldwell Pope, Turner, Fournier, obviously site dependent, all sitting in that range. I like all three in cash. I like all three in tournaments. I think Fournier is a great play because he's playing small forward, and we know small forward is not the best spot that Boston defends well.
Yeah, that's a really nice range that I'm looking at tonight, and you can hit some really solid value. KCP's been pretty intriguing lately, and I don't hate the matchup tonight. But yeah, Turner and Fournier both in play.
Yeah. Outside of that, if you're going a little bit lower, if you want to take a wild shot at J.R. Smith if Kevin Love's out, because there is some usage to spread around, it's a nice matchup for him. And the guy does have 30-point upside, but he also has a floor in the single digits.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to get hit with a J.R. Smith night, which just crushes your lineup. So probably more avoid than even want to throw him in a lineup.
Yeah. Outside of that, I can't see much lower than I'm really after. I think you're just really pushing it with guys like Danny Green, Tim Hardaway, Shumpert, Vince Carter, so
Yeah.
on. I can't see myself playing any.
No, I just think that 5K range is really, really solid. So there's no real need to sort of save there,
Yeah. Looking at small forward tonight, and if you're taking a look at guys that are out, um, Robert Covington's out. He's looking to come back next week, or next game. You're taking a look at Jeremy Grant. Hollis Thompson is the big beneficiary, still playing heavy minutes. I don't like the matchup anyway, so I just think those are easy avoid situations.
Yeah, Paul George probably don't want to be matching up against the 76ers small forward tonight. So, yeah, definitely an avoid situation there.
Yeah. Looking up top, you got Giannis, LeBron, Paul George as top plays. If Love sits, I like LeBron a little bit more. I just think he's a little bit of a safer option over Giannis for 600 cheaper. And Paul George is just still below 9K against the Sixers. Just feels way too right to fade tonight.
That's what I mean. I just look at that price. I look at the matchup and I say, okay, if Philly can stay in this and keep it within 10, like Paul George is hitting value tonight, you know? So I think if they can keep it together for 3 quarters, he's a really safe play. And I think, I mean, if he can get into that fourth quarter, 50-point fantasy upside tonight. So yeah, definitely in play for me. I really like that price.
Yeah. If there was some news with the Spurs sitting and it forced Kawhi into a bigger usage role, he would obviously be in play going up against Charlotte. But if the Spurs do come out full health, I'd just rather pay up for George for 300 more.
Right. I mean, with that line, I think that definitely puts Kawhi in play just because, I mean, if someone does sit, he's going to get more usage. And if Charlotte can keep it close, he's definitely got a really high floor tonight. So him and George, again, I think are going to be platooning as sort of my top two with value included guys tonight.
Yeah. Looking a little bit cheaper, you guys got like Lance Stevenson, Rudy Gay, Tobias Harris, all sitting in that 65 to 6,000 range. Kind of intriguing, all three options at their own different aspects. Stevenson kind of taking on a heavier workload, higher usage, going up against Phoenix. He's my preferred play out of three, and I think he definitely has the higher upside of all three. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah. All right, Lance, let's do it. I'm in.
Welcome to March basketball.
One of these nights, he's just gonna like punch someone in the face or something. But until that happens, I mean, he's been really good lately. So, not a situation to avoid tonight, especially against the Suns. So, definitely in play for me. And I mean, when you look at Matt Barnes at 5,800, I think he's in play as well. So, I wouldn't actually be afraid to stack those two. I think both could get into that 35 fantasy point range at maybe the higher end of their outcomes. So if both of them can do that, you're hitting some pretty solid value.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Looking at Otto Porter, if Bradley Beal's out for a cheap option, just because there's not much low that I like tonight, but Porter, I mean, been quietly consistent of late. The minutes have been there. Minutes will continue to be there, especially if Beal sits. I mean, he's just been rebounding the ball well, 5, 5, 6, 6 over the last 4 games. 25 fantasy points in each of the last 4. It's not a terrible matchup against the Hawks. They've been up and down defensively.
Again, if you're playing cash tonight, definitely someone you wanna look at for that price. You know.
Yeah. Anyone cheaper you're really looking at?
Not really. I like the Memphis sort of guys there. So it's kind of. I mean. I've seen Barnes being thrown out there. I don't really trust that. That kind of makes me feel uneasy to ever play Harrison Barnes just based on his role. So I don't really see much below, that sort of 5K range.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think kind of guys like Tucker, so up and down. Tony Allen, I guess you can call yourself a cheap Matt Barnes or kind of Stevenson there if you want a little bit of a discount. Not quite as high as upside, though.
Right.
Moving over to power forward tonight, and depending on the site you're on, DeMarcus Cousins against the Bulls.
Just like Lance. Come on, Bogey. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the back-to-back or anything like that. It's just a tremendous matchup.
Yeah. And again, FanDuel, you know the drill at this point, folks.
Yeah.
You just put him in.
He's up over 11K, but there's enough value on this slate to really work him in and feel good about it.
Right. And I think the theme of sort of post All-Star break DFS is that value opens up pretty much every night. So it becomes a little easier to make those stars and scrubs lineups, especially with studs and good matchups like this.
Yeah. there's a lot of power forward options. And I don't think it's entirely crazy to fade Cousins if you wanted to go balance. But I mean, you're looking at Paul Millsap in a decent spot, Draymond Green, LaMarcus Aldridge sitting 3,000 cheaper. I mean, you can fit two of them for almost Cousins and a value play. So I kind of like that as well. And Green has significant upside.
Right. Yeah, no, those three are all very intriguing to me, especially Draymond and Aldridge. I think those can be the building blocks of a really, really nice cash lineup. But I think what those three do is sort of push down the value of some of those mid-range options like Noel. I mean, even if you were sort of targeting a Philly type of lineup, those three on top of him, that especially Aldridge, they're not really that much more expensive than him. And I think they're much safer options. So I think you just want to kind of pivot up instead of sit at Noel.
Yeah. And I think you're looking at Randolph as well, coming off a monster triple-double game.
Right.
I mean, he's definitely in play against Phoenix tonight, and I'll be looking at him as well. Going cheaper, Aaron Gordon, 5,800 on DK, cheap on FanDuel as well. Great matchup against Boston, but we are always dealing with
Mr. Skiles.
Yeah, and he's not a big fan of Aaron Gordon lately, I guess. 13 minutes, 31, 18 in the last three games. Love the matchup if he plays 30-plus minutes, and I think at that price, he's definitely worth the GPP target.
Absolutely worth the GPP target. I mean, we saw for that stretch what sort of he can consistently do if he has that role, but there is that concern. So he's actually a little like Kenneth Faried type of style for fantasy points right now, where any night you could end up with 12 or 13 right now. So, yeah, definitely a tournament play, but there are some other decent options around him. So, I mean, I'm looking at Gorgie Dang. He's sort of made himself a little more consistent lately, and I don't hate that matchup tonight for him.
Yeah, I think you're looking at that total. He's a solid play, and I mean, the minutes have certainly bounced back after kind of a little stumble, but I mean, really, he's been in that 30-point range, and his price has come down over that stretch. Look at the Bulls situation. If Pau Gasol sits, Gibson's a safe play either way. Mirotic takes a little bit of a hit minutes-wise. Same with Portis. They just kind of tick down just a little bit more.
Yeah, all worthy options. Gibson definitely the guy I'm targeting more so, but if Pau does sit, Mirotic definitely in play. I mean, I could see him having a big scoring night against the Kings if he were to get the minutes.
Yeah, and then with the Love news, Channing Frye, Tristan Thompson see a bump. I think that game's just going to depend on how that game goes. I mean, I don't trust either one a tremendous lot, but both have decent upside. I think both of them do it completely differently because Thompson could easily go out there and get, 10 and 15 while Channing Frye can light it up from 3. So it's just completely two different players. I'm just a little bit concerned of which one of them's going to go off and one of them's going to have a pretty mediocre night.
Right, and this is where I see like maybe getting a little fancy with the value plays. Power forward is something that I'm intrigued with, especially on DraftKings with your utility spot or something like that to open up value.
Yeah, when you can roster 3 in one position and you can maybe play 3 power forwards, it works out. You can definitely work a value play in there.
Right.
So, moving over to center tonight, we talked about Pau Gasol. Vucevic is doubtful tonight. You're looking at him. You're looking once again. Skiles playing guys like Dwayne Dedmon, Smith. You're not knowing who's going to get the minutes down low. And that's not because it's such a great matchup. It puts those guys on the map. But minutes wise, you can't feel good about it.
Oh, Jason. I'm
flustered, Scott.
He does have you flustered. I think he has everyone flustered at this point. I mean, it's just, I don't know what he's doing over there, but yeah, I agree. They're pretty risky. You just kind of want to see Vucevic back and then go from there, but yeah.
Yeah, they are plays that could pay off in a big tournament like tonight because they definitely have upside. I think Smith more so just because we've seen it. But outside of that, I think we like two guys for possible tournaments, and that's Greg Monroe and Sullinger sitting at 55 and 5,600. Both definitely have upside when Monroe sees those minutes. Sullinger, we've seen it extremely well over the last few weeks here, and both cheap price tags and great matchups. I'm definitely going to have some shares there.
I'm even okay with putting them both in a lineup or two because that's cheap. I mean, that is cheap for Greg Monroe. I get that he's been down a little bit lately, but I mean, if he 27 to 30 minutes tonight, if he gets that, he still has that 35 to 40 fantasy point upside. So I don't hate the matchup either. I just think things could be solid for him tonight.
I mean, you look at people are scared off him or off against Drummond. You look at the rebound rate, but Detroit ranks 28th in efficiency against opposing centers. And I mean, Monroe, he got a little narrative going up against his old team. He's averaged 14 and 11 in 30 minutes in 3 games against them. I would love 36 fantasy points from a guy who's that price. That's great.
Definitely. And I mean, yeah, Sullinger, we've talked about it. We've been on him for quite a few games here, and he's just awesome.
Yeah. Looking up at that Memphis-Phoenix situation, Len and Chandler kind of both on my radar tonight. Chandler's been playing really well. Len's been kind of down a bit. I like both in the matchup. I think both have pretty solid upside. The prices aren't too bad. I like Chandler's price a little bit more than Len's, but still, I mean, both are definitely double threats tonight.
Definitely. And I mean, we've seen the Memphis Grizzlies games lately are just so much YOLO on both sides of the ball, it seems lately. We don't really know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I definitely like quite a few Phoenix players and quite a few Grizzlies players tonight. So that's an interesting game to target for sort of a game stack.
Looking at the Washington-Atlanta game, they featured 2 quality centers, both the same price, Gortat and Horford. Gortat questionable tonight with the lower back issue. Likely see guys like Nene pick up some extra minutes down low. I like Horford a little bit more if he sits down low. I think Horford's a pretty solid play with upside, and the price is just never catching up to him.
Right, and we're seeing Atlanta lean on him a little more sort of offensively and overall lately. So he's been over 40 points in over 40 fantasy points 3 of the last 5 games. So definitely someone to look at for upside at his price.
Yeah, and then going up top, I think Drummond, Towns definitely kind of your targets to pay up for as usual.
Mm-hmm.
If Gasol comes back and is healthy, low on play. I mean, you're going up against the Kings here.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you're kind of liking him being questionable all day. And then, hey, if he plays last minute, you might be able to throw him in there for reduced ownership prices. So, yeah, that's definitely one to watch until the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, the last 10 games, he's been under 40 just twice. And you're looking at other games, 2 games in the 60s, 1 game in the 70s. So Gasol could be a sneaky play if he stays healthy in this matchup and plays his usual minutes. But, of course, it's a big risk.
Definitely.
So the usual end of the round here, who's your top scorer? And it's all players because you know what? We got Boogie, we got Curry. You got everyone on the slate that could really go off.
Well, you know, I'm looking at Doug. Never mind. No. You know what? I said I was going to go against the Vegas tonight. I'm going with Paul George.
Ooh, highest score.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm playing it. I'm going Curry. Curry bounces back after a tough matchup against the Spurs. Minnesota keeps it close enough for him to really go off, and I can't argue against Paul George. I like that call a lot.
Fair enough.
So that's going to wrap things up here with the Minutes to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.